This is Abnormal Entertainment.
2, 3, 4. Walked into the tunnel just to find the light. Hunted for old demons, looking for a fight. Looked up at the stars, seemed to go forever. There must be a way, it all fits together. Fell into the quicksand, held on to the vines. Never could quite color, stay within the lines. Feels like I have wings, I can fly wherever. This is just a way, it all fits together. Finally saw the world through rose-colored glasses. Gonna share my journey to small and large masses. Give up on my life, no sir, me never. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Hey everybody, this is Daniel Garza. Welcome to another episode of Put It Together. I'd like to start as usual thanking my producer, Mr. Kevin Warriors, for all his help and support. Thank you, sir. Go check us out at abnormalentertainment.com, where you can find all the shows on the network. Today, I'm excited. I have Cathy Cassata on the show. She is a writer. You're a freelance writer, correct?
I am. I freelance for different websites, mostly health and wellness.
And Cathy and I met because she was, I'm guessing you got the short stick and you got stuck writing a story on me.
It was great opportunity, Daniel. I was lucky to be assigned your story.
This is now a couple of years ago. Maybe 3?
Actually, I think it was about a year ago.
Really?
Only a year ago. It feels like I've known you for a long time, but it's only been a year, I think. Yeah.
That can't be right. I'm going to go back and check the emails. I know I haven't done.
Yeah, maybe do that.
But you know, the story made another round recently.
Yes, you said
right?
that. Did somebody, I think somebody must have reposted it or something?
Yeah, somebody found it, I guess, on my page. I think they went, because I have my HIV Positive Life page, which is all about HIV and things related to. And
okay.
It's on there, and I've been getting a lot more hits on that page.
It's great.
So I think somebody found it. So one of my friends found it, shared it, tagged me on it, and then I got the notification. I was like, wow, this is coming back. And then all of a sudden it just got a little bit more fire under it, which is excellent, right? I mean,
wonderful. I love your story. It was very inspiring.
Good, thank you. It's all lies, by the way. It's somebody else's life. It's not even mine.
Well, I hope not.
I guess I never
know.
I've made up everything in my life at this point. No, just kidding.
It's actually funny because you never know. Somebody could be totally lying to you that you're interviewing, right?
Yeah, but honestly, and then we'll move on to you. Honestly, every once in a while when I do get the honor of being interviewed for something and I get to tell my story again, I do come off of the conversation going, how did that happen? Like, how have I survived all this stuff? Not because I'm superhuman or anything.
No,
it's just,
I know what you mean.
It's just that, more so it's the amazement of how much our bodies and our minds can handle before we completely break down. That's really incredible to me.
Yeah, and yours, I think when I was writing your story, so much has happened to you that you really have to look at it in stages, and that's probably overwhelming to go back and say, oh, wow, that happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So I'm sure seeing everything all in one page is a little
yeah.
Wow. Makes you think, wow, yeah.
And I'm sure this happens to other people who have been written of you read your story and it's so compact
Yes.
and you're like, I'm 48. This is 48 years of life in a couple of pages. And it's just like, wow. Like,
Yeah, in 1,500 words, right? Let's squeeze it into
there you
1,500
go.
words. Yeah.
All right, Cathy. Well, let's get started with your story. Cathy Cassata, tell us how you put it together.
How do I put it together? So I guess I'm going to connect this to my work. I'm going to take us back to, speaking of time, 12 years ago already. So 12 years ago, I was pregnant with my first child. I was working at my full-time job as a editor for a medical association. And it was a great job. I had actually worked there for 8 years. And since it was a smaller publication, I was able to learn a ton. So I was able to do a lot of proofreading, writing, editing, working on some marketing materials and things like that. So I had been there about 7 years, and I was pregnant with Ben, my son. And my mother had happened to be diagnosed with cancer. The same day I found out that I was pregnant with Ben, officially at the doctor's office, my mother also was at her doctor, finding out that her breast cancer had metastasized. So she had been diagnosed with cancer at 35 years old. She carried the BRCA2 gene, and so it was very deep in her family. So her mother had died before she was 40. My aunt, which is my mother's sister, had died at 52. But my mother was the first person to get tested. So long story short on that is she ended up passing away when I was 3 months pregnant with my son. So that really kind of was eye-opening to me. As with many people, when you have loss, you kind of start to think about, wow, what do I really want out of life, right?
Right.
And it ended up being just kind of a pretty tragic year. We lost a nephew that was only 3.5 years old. That was 3 months after Ben was born. And then one of my friends who had been struggling with mental illness had really gotten very bad. And she decided she was just going to take off and go to California. So just to give you some perspective, all these things were happening. So after I had Ben, I went back to work full time and just kind of decided, you know what? I've always wanted to freelance write. I just felt this kind of pull to do that. So my husband supported me, and we decided I would tell my boss this. She was amazing. We had such a good relationship that she let me work from home it ended up being about a year. And during that year, I started trying to get freelance clients. So at that time, I was basically taking whatever I could, things that I don't write about now. Now I'm at a place where I just love what I'm writing about. But at that time, I was doing some business writing, marketing writing, anything I could get just so I could justify leaving a full-time job, which is kind of risky. So I built and built, and I would say eventually I was able to completely leave my full-time job and just freelance. And then it was just a slow kind of building clients and getting to a point where I could start saying no to things that I didn't want to write about. And so now I find myself in a place where I'm writing about what I love, like your story. I love telling people's stories and an inspirational take on how they get through things, because, somebody reading your story or somebody else's story, I feel like will take away a bit of that, whether it directly relates to them or not, and will help them. So I really feel like writing about health and wellness, it's on the surface seems like, oh, it's just a medical condition, but I really think it's really deep down to life, how you get through life. So
can I,
yeah,
again, talking about compact, all these
I
things.
know, sorry.
No, I mean, all these things that happened to you
Yeah.
in that was what, like a year worth of time?
It was a year. It was an entire year from January to December, actually. Yeah. Of 2007.
How much of what you went through impacts the way that you write your stories now?
No, that's a great point. I've thought about that because, also 4 years after my mother died, my father died. So that was two deaths close to each other. So adding all that to it, I really think I look at things from the person I'm interviewing. I really put myself in their shoes. I really empathize with them. And it gives me kind of a perspective of, maybe I haven't been through what exactly they have, but I have been through loss and wanting to share my story. So that's how I approach a story, is I want to share it from the person I'm interviewing's perspective, truthfully. Right. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, because I asked that because everything that I've been through, although I know my guests, I know their basic life. Like, I know you're a writer, I know kind of what you do, but because of the show, we always go a step further and go,
sure,
how does your personal life affect who you are now or the work that you do? And you're right, it makes you, like, it makes me not ask dumb questions. Like, were you sad when your mother died? Well, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, if you weren't, we have a whole other article that would be interesting, right? Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember when you interviewed me, you were very, I'm going to use the word soft, and in a positive way. Like, you were delicate. There we go. You were very delicate in the way that the conversation flowed.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah.
So that I didn't feel like you were just fishing for the drama of the story, but rather the feeling of the story. Does that make sense?
Yes. No, and that's great to hear because that is certainly my goal. And it's funny you say the drama of the story. I don't want to get too off the subject, but it's kind of one of the reasons why I never wanted to work for a newspaper. And I don't mean we need newspapers. Reporters are so important. We need current events. We need to understand this stuff. But I kind of always knew I never wanted to have to interview somebody after something so tragic happened immediately.
Right.
That is so difficult because how we react after, say, you interview a mother after her son just died in a car accident, is talking to her a half an hour after that happened versus talking to her 2-3 years later is so different. I love people to be able to think about what they went through, internalize it, and then express it. Because there is such a difference when you're able to, think about something after it's happened to you.
Yeah.
Makes sense. That's why I never wanted to go the route of like newspapers. It's needed, but it's just not something I would be able to do.
I don't think, I think we all have, and I humbly include myself in that. I like to brag about it because after 7 years and 250 episodes, I think I've gotten a hint of this a little bit. But we all have our way of doing our own style of interviewing. And some people are good out in the field at the moment.
Absolutely.
And some of us are like, okay, I'll wait for things to settle and then we'll pick up some of the pieces. Cause come on, how many times have we and I'll take it to a lighter side on an award presentation or a pageant. And as soon as they're done, they're like, how do you feel?
Right. I don't know.
Excited? Like, how excited are you? Well, pretty excited or that for me is like, I couldn't be that person. I couldn't ask those questions.
No, but some people are great at it,
Yeah. And by the way, there is no off topic. This is your episode, so whatever direction we go in, we're good.
Yeah, I was gonna go back to. I don't know if you'll find this interesting, but I just started writing for this company called Story Terrace, and what they do is they started in London and they've made their way to the US. They're based out of LA, but what they do, they write biographies for people. So this is, like you were saying, your whole life was put into 1,500 words. Now I'm interviewing people for, 8 to 10 hours, and they're telling me their life story. And then I'm putting it into their own personal biography, for them to share with friends, family, sometimes business, if they're a motivational speaker or something, they might do that. But I find that really interesting because kind of what you said, where you have to kind of take a step back and think, the man I interviewed yesterday said to me, he's a successful businessman, but he said what was hardest was talking about his childhood, his family, his personal things versus work related. And so it kind of got him to stop and think about everything in sections.
Right.
Who are my ancestors? How was my childhood? When did I get married, or whatever it may be? When did I have kids? And so I find that really fun and more in depth because you're able to spend more time talking to somebody than, I think you and I talked a long time. I think we talked over an hour, but that's because you started asking me questions, which was very unique. Most people don't do that. Yeah. It was funny.
I'm trying not to laugh because I start coughing, but I think most people that interview me, it always extends beyond the time.
I think so. You start questioning them, don't you? I found that so funny.
Well, a lot of it has to do, and my audience knows about this, a lot of it has to do with the energy. And
okay, yeah.
As you know, I'm very big into energy and readings and Reiki, and so when somebody's interviewing me, it gets very personal. My energy opens up because I have to be vulnerable for a little bit. So I start picking up people's energy, and then usually at the end it turns out to like, as long as I have you on the phone, hold on a second, and then I do readings.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then do you typically do a reading? Because you did a reading for me.
Yeah, most people get one whether they want it or not. It's just gonna happen.
Yeah.
So you let's go back to the freelancing, because you start your freelancing.
Yeah.
You're doing what you like. Can you tell us a little bit about like the stressful side of it, just so people get a realistic view of it?
Yeah. The thing about freelancing that's hard is that you don't know, when your next job or gig is coming or assignment. So in the early years, that was very difficult for me. Sometimes you have too much work, and then sometimes you don't have any. And so the trap you get into is, I'm going to take everything because I don't know when the next thing's coming. And then you get overwhelmed, or you take things, like I said, that you're not really interested in. So over time, I learned how to kind of manage that. Another thing that a lot of people ask me is, since I work from home, I work remotely, a lot of people will ask, how do you not get distracted by laundry or doing the dishes, And what's funny with me was I actually had the opposite problem, where for a long time, I was always working when I was home because that is my place of work. So I really had to figure out how to say, okay, at 6 o'clock, I'm no longer working. And I'm not really so much distracted by the housework. It's more that for me is, how do I not work in my house? Does that make sense?
Would you qualify yourself as a workaholic?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I don't think so, because certainly, I probably could be writing a lot more.
Oh, okay.
If I, do you know what I mean? No,
Yeah. Because I work from home a lot, as I am right
you
now.
do.
People don't
Yeah.
realize that I have my hoodie on top, but I have my pajamas on the bottom. It's only
Yes,
it's only 12:30 in Laguna,
I know.
and I'm already in my pajamas. I woke up. I mean, I went outside, so I had pants on. People, stop it! But it's raining here, and it's a little chilly. So as soon as I got home from running my errands, and this was my last thing for the day, I'm like, I'm in pajamas now. I'm doing it in pajamas.
Well, I'll tell you a secret, Daniel. I'm presentable from the. I do the same thing. I have very comfortable pants on, so as long as I don't move the camera, we're good.
We're good. This is a pajama party interview.
Yeah, so fun.
Because going back to your working from home, I am a workaholic. Like I'll sit down. Like I'll get up at 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning. I'll wake up. I'm on my phone, checking emails, what do I need to do for the day. Then I come to the couch, set up coffee and a couple of cookies. And then by the time I realize it's like 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'm like, where did the day go? Like how did I get it?
Yeah.
Do you have self-control?
So I'm an early person like you. So I'll start early, like with emails and checking stories, where did my story get posted? How many people read it and all that kind of stuff. Nighttime I'm better at. I kind of veg at night. So I can't work at night. My brain kind of shuts down. Yeah. But I have found that sometimes I'm waking up at 5 a.m. because I feel like I need to get stuff done. But I'll usually stop by 6.
Do you have an idea of how many personal stories like mine you've written?
That's a good question. I was actually thinking about that the other day. I mean, I think I'm going to say 100 over. Yeah, I mean, for Healthline, because I also write news and feature stories for them. So not all of them are personal profiles. But I would say maybe 100.
100?
Yeah.
And after 100 of personal stories that revolve around health,
yeah,
does that play with your head in any way? Like, oh crap, I need to go get checked for this. Oh crap. Like like the symptoms you hear from somebody, you're like, wait a minute. I've been kind of like we're like a walking, talking WebMD for
absolutely
for an interviewer.
Yes.
Does that freak you out at any time?
A little. And what's kind of interesting is when I was a kid, I would say I was a bit of a hypochondriac. I was a bit of a germaphobe, a little bit. If my brother and sister heard this, they'd say a lot. That was a lie. But I have, slightly grown out of that. There's certainly times if I'm writing about a certain condition a lot, where that will happen. Now, with Healthline, I get a mix. So yours was HIV. I just wrote about heart condition or, breast cancer. So it's a mix. My brain gets a break from that one condition. But if I've written like 5 or 6 stories in a row about the same thing, like say multiple, MS, then I might start thinking, oh, was that symptom a symptom of MS or?
Yeah. Because I would think that like when I go to conferences with advocates and I start talking to people and I'm like, wait. Tell me the symptoms again.
So you get that way, huh? Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, huh. And usually the ladies will be like, no, Daniel, you're not PMSing. Calm down.
You don't have ovaries, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
You're not pregnant. Stop it. Step away from the buffet line. 'Cause I would think that after listening to so much stuff you have to develop some kind of like association to some people and go, is that what I'm going through? Like, is that happening?
Yeah, I might do that more with the mental health topics, which
Oh yeah.
I don't know why. Yeah, with either myself or other people. I might be like, oh, I wonder if they're, experiencing anxiety right now. So it's, for some reason, my mind goes there more with the mental health topic.
That was going to be my next question.
Yeah.
Some people would, I can see this from both sides, and I'll let you go in the direction that fits you. On the one side of the spectrum would be a person that becomes a little cold towards health issues or mental health issues for people. And you kind of see it as okay, that happens. Life happens. But then on the other side, it could totally open your compassion, especially when you have children. I would say,
Yeah,
your compassion and your that motherly instinct might kick in.
right. No, that's a good point. I often wonder that about like physicians, because
Yeah.
diagnosing things, right? For me, mental health, I have a personal connection to it in the sense of the friend I mentioned. We were friends since the time we were 5 years old, and we lived across the street from each other. And so we were very close all the way through our 20s. And in our mid 20s, she started showing signs of schizophrenia. And I'm the person that she confided in. And so that was very difficult, because it was incredibly eye-opening. When you see somebody who you've known for years, and so to me, I have a soft spot for mental health, and I've actually started writing for Bring Change to Mind, which is an organization run by Glenn Close, and I love her organization. And so I've started blogging for them just in my free time about my experience as a friend of somebody with schizophrenia. So that I don't become that way, because I really do think it's such a hard thing to understand unless you've experienced it yourself or you've seen it, and somebody you love. I don't know if that's your question.
Yeah, because I again, and I said this at the beginning, you were so delicate in the way that you were talking to me, and that made me feel like, okay, I can open up a little more. But mental health issues they're so taboo, and people still live in shame with it because it's hard to prove that you're anxious. It's hard for people to actually see you during a panic attack, because a lot of us, I suffer from anxiety and panic attacks. People don't see you when you're going through it because we hide it.
Yes, yeah.
So by the time you see us, we've already processed it and we're back to normal. Which is why, about a month ago or so, I was having trouble with one of my doctors not believing that I suffered from panic attacks.
Oh.
And so one day I started getting one, and I recorded myself. I picked up the phone and started recording myself. And you could just see my just getting red and flushed and just sweat just pouring, and this lost look in my eye. And I'm able to talk through it, which I do credit all this time being online and doing videos to the fact that through the whole process, I'm still able to maintain it. But you know what happened was during that moment, I figured, interview yourself, pretend you're interviewing yourself. And,
wow.
What would you say to people as you're going through? And I posted it online, and some people messaged me like, "Oh my God, that's exactly what happens to me."
Sure.
Even my boyfriend.
See that.
Even my boyfriend hadn't seen me going through something like that. So
he hadn't. Okay. And the thing too with panic attacks, right, is that they are kind of short.
Yeah.
But they could miss it. Yeah, they could miss you in the moment, right?
Yeah, and my anxiety kicks in. I thought I was casually diagnosed as agoraphobic, which I don't like to leave my house, which I don't. But I always thought I was just lazy. I was like, I just don't want to leave my house. But then at the study that I go to, after some questions, that the physician assistant was like, I think you have an issue. And then she wrote it down.
Yeah.
My primary doctor saw it. He's like, oh, I can see that. I'm like, oh, now you can see it. Like, okay, fine. But yeah, anxiety is so different on people, and it's not like schizophrenia. It's not boom.
Right. It's not in your face. Yeah. Well, I had actually just written for Healthline. I just wrote a story about a friend of mine. And the title was Motherhood Forced Me to Face My Anxiety. And, I knew that she had anxiety, but I did not know until I wrote her story how debilitating it was for her. Like, I had no idea that she didn't want to leave the house. I had no idea that it was, interfering with her taking care of her children. So I do think you're right. Kind of this, to some people, they're like elusive or something. I don't know. They might not believe it.
Now that we're talking about it a little bit, can I ask, because I don't think I've ever actually asked anybody this, the ripple effect? Because every illness, everything, any kind of diagnosis, any disability has a ripple effect. It doesn't just affect the person, but the caregivers and the people around them. What was the ripple? Maybe not just of this. What has been the ripple effect on you through everything that you've been through?
I would say the with my mom and the breast cancer, I kind of look at that as I'm a grateful person, in the sense that, I know so much more than my poor grandmother did. I mean, this woman, they really didn't know much about breast cancer when she died. And so to me, I kind of just take that as I'm able to screen myself, use whatever medical technology has today. I was genetic tested. So I kind of look at that as gratefulness. And I really am grateful for the time I had with my mom. I mean, she was 61 years old. To some people that's young, but really it's not, when you think about she could have died when she was 35. So that's kind of the effect that has had on me. And I got to have her till I was 29 years old. I was certainly an adult. As far as my friend's mental illness, honestly, that caused me a lot of guilt for a long time because I felt very bad. I couldn't help her. And to be honest, it's very difficult to get somebody help who is mentally ill in that way when they're an adult. So I've kind of learned to accept that as well, that it wasn't completely my fault, that I wasn't able to help her. So that's kind of and maybe that's why I'm more sensitive to mental health issues, because I feel, I feel like we got to change that. We got to make it easier to get people help while still allowing them to have choices. And it's a very tricky, it's a very difficult subject. So
I guess can we use this little moment for somebody who's in the ripple effect of what would you tell them?
What I learned was eventually, and I don't know that a professional would recommend this, but I eventually decided when my friend was telling me about her paranoias and her hallucinations, that I decided to stop telling her that they weren't true. And I decided to just be empathetic and say, oh, that's terrible that you're seeing the devil walking down the street. That must be terrifying. And so that was the approach I took, because it made her feel in some sense understood. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so that was my approach as a friend. In terms of getting somebody help, it's just so hard. It's just because you can't throw somebody into a mental health facility. You know, I mean, you can go to mental health professionals and ask them what you can do.
Yeah. I think that's, I know people are going to be like, what? But in the early 30s, 40s, 50s, still, people were able to say, I need to put my mom, my sister, my brother, he's having issues. And then that stopped. And although I believe that we have a right to decide whether we go into a facility or not, but to completely cut off the people in the ripple, from having some say.
I agree with you. I don't know how to find that solution where it's a little bit of both, right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah. So for anybody there listening, if you are either the person suffering from an issue, know that we understand, and there's always somebody that you can go to. Although I have such a pet peeve with people because, like, when you're going through it, call me. I'm like, calling you is the last thing on my mind when I'm having a panic attack. Like, I don't
exactly. Yes, but
maybe
from your perspective, that's a good question. From your perspective, what do you want from a friend or a loved one when that's happening to you? You know?
I think the only thing, like, for instance, Christian, the only thing I tell Christian is, like, when I'm going through it, and you're there, just let me get through it. We know it's like 5 minutes of, I'm going to go in. No matter what you say, my brain is already going toward it. And it could be something can trigger it. You know what? That's the thing. It's learning what triggers the anxiety that leads to the panic attacks. Like,
got it.
Knowing now that I possibly am agoraphobic, that when I'm ready to leave the house, which is what causes my anxiety and triggers a panic attack, is don't let me linger in the house before I have to go. Like, got it. Like, help me get my Christian. Yeah. Help me get my stuff together and get me out the door, and then I'm out. Like, now I'm out the door. Versus, like, it used to, because it still does, and not used to be. It would take me 20 minutes to leave the house because right before I leave the house, something needs to get put up, or I need to look in the fridge, or I need to wash that dish before I walk out, which has been sitting there all day long, but all of a sudden it's really important. Moving my shoes from the living room to the bedroom, and then, now this needs to be put up. So my brain starts, and then it goes in. Then I look at the clock and it's like, I've already wasted so much time. Now I'm going to be late. Well, I might as well just not go because I'd rather not be there than be late. Yeah. And then now I've talked myself out of going, which causes a whole panic attack because how irresponsible of me. And then it triggers the depression. And then I'm just sitting on my couch miserable.
Yeah.
So
it's like a spiral.
Yeah. But learning and I think you did a great job with your friend, and that is like knowing what the trigger was. If she saw things and nobody acknowledged that she saw it, right? You're not acknowledging that the monster was there, right? You're just acknowledging that she sees it. Yeah, and that it's scary. Yeah, and, it's terrifying. Yeah, right. It's kind of like kids with monsters under their bed. You're not acknowledging that there's a monster. You're just recognizing that the kid sees a monster under the bed. That's a really good analogy. Yeah, it's true. Right. Yeah. So I think it's kind of like when people about my card readings and my Reiki is like, I'm not asking you to believe in it. Just believe that I believe in it. Right. Yeah. That this is something I get, I get something from this. Yeah. Yeah. So anyway. This is a random question. Can I ask you really quick? Sure. Stand up. I saw that. Oh. What was that about Tommy? Did you talk about Tommy? Well, yeah. I post cancer. I've been very aggressive in learning new things, like things that I normally would not do. I never thought I would do stand up. The class came up. I'm a member of SAG, so the Screen Actors Guild.
Oh, okay, right.
So I'm SAG-AFTRA, and they bring in workshops. So they brought in a stand-up comedy workshop. So I took it.
How fun.
In the class, they teach you how to write a joke. So my joke, and some people might cringe at this, but who cares? The joke I wrote was, as a gay man, the best cancer to get is anal cancer. Because at least you have a doctor to see on a monthly basis, and you know you're going to get some.
Oh, that is bad.
I go, but...
Laughs. Did you get
laughs?
Yes,
I did, yeah. Some of them were kind of awkward. They were like, should we laugh at this?
I know, like, is that funny?
But they didn't know that I'd gone through anal cancer. And I go, but I said, the best thing about anal cancer is that I've been able to live through one of my childhood dreams. Now I really know what it's like to be a Muppet. Yeah. So,
okay, come on. You gotta laugh at that.
You gotta laugh at that, yeah. I think it only takes people who have been around health issues to appreciate a joke like that.
Right, yeah. Right.
And, so one of the instructors came up to me and gave me the card. They were giving these cards with their address or whatever, as an invitation, like, you're funny enough that we want to see you in class.
Oh, neat.
So everybody in the audience was calling him the golden ticket, like you wanted a golden ticket. So I got off stage and he pat me on the shoulder and he's like, you're funny. You need to call me. I was like, okay. So I went and told Chris and I said, hey, this is what happened. I want to take the class. And, my purpose was to do stand up so that when I do conferences and they have talent nights at conferences, I could do my stand up and do butt jokes basically.
Got it.
But it turned out that people laughed, and I just did a second show with them. Yeah,
that's great.
The Ice House here in Pasadena, which is pretty highly regarded as one of the best places to go. And we did the main stage, and people laughed, and I was pretty proud of myself. Yeah, so
yeah, that's one thing I remember about your writing your story was I liked how you had a sense of humor with all you had been through. I think that's pretty unique.
There's a point that you just have to laugh, and people don't get it. And there's this saying, this little post that I did on my page that says, being positive doesn't mean every day is great.
Yeah.
Like I think, yeah. And I mean, I'm sure some of the people that you've interviewed, regardless, you just have to stay positive. Like, it doesn't mean you're not hurting.
Right.
Or
have a bad day or sad or whatever. Yeah.
So let me ask you this, based on the stories that you've written about people.
Yeah.
How do you maintain positive about it? How do you not let all that energy attach to you?
That's such a great question. I think it's perspective, because my brother and my sister recently told me, you write about such depressing stuff. And they said, gosh, I don't even think about it that way. I think about it a completely different way, that I'm not writing about depressing stuff. I'm writing about like reality. This is life. This is what happens. So I look at it more as kind of, this is what happens, and let's put a positive twist on it, right? So that's how I look at it. I don't let the stories get me down, or no. I more feed off the energy of the people I'm interviewing, that they got through this and they're still going, Right. So that's my approach with this stuff. I think otherwise I probably wouldn't be able to write about these things. Yeah.
What is your, other than your brother and sister, I didn't even ask how old your boy is now.
My kids are? Oh yeah. So my son is 11 and my daughter is 9. So yeah, my son, right. He was 3. I was 3 months pregnant with him when my mom passed.
Do they get to read any of your stories?
It's funny. Some of my stuff I feel is too deep or too over their heads. But I I wrote a story about this NFL player who's also a doctor. And so I thought that one would be fun for my son because he likes football and sports. And he read about half of it and was excited. And then he was like, I don't know what the rest of this means. So some of it's just over their head. I'll tell them about things that I write about, though, at dinner. It's sometimes a dinner conversation. So, yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we're at the 45-minute mark.
Yeah.
This is the part of the show where I usually ask my guest to share some words of wisdom with my listeners. So, Cathy Cassata, what words of wisdom do you have?
My words of wisdom are always find humor in whatever is happening in your life. No matter what it may be. That's my parents taught me that, you know, and my husband and I are that way. So I would say just find something. If you miss somebody, find something about them that made you laugh.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, because definitely find humor. I may not use those words, but I was like, you gotta laugh, man. Like, there's a point in your life where you're like, one more thing. Like, I go to the doctor, like, your diabetes is spiking. Yeah, there you go. Like, and the doctors are like, you take this really, like, nonchalant. I'm like, no, I listen. But at this point, God and I have a deal. Like, what other surprise are you going to throw my way?
What am I going to do, right?
Yeah.
And I also think part of what I was saying, too, is kind of what you're saying is don't take yourself so seriously. You know, I think so many people take themselves so seriously. And when you do that, if something doesn't go your way, then it's just that much harder.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm an overachiever, so I want all the illnesses and sicknesses I can have before I die.
So you can conquer them, or you can say you had the most?
I want somebody to come in and ask for my body. They're like, we need to do some scientific research on this dude. Because all this, you know, my sister jokingly tells me especially after cancer, she's like, don't you know how to die? Like, everything you've been through and you're still here. Like, do we need to get you a book on how to die? I'm like, yeah, please do.
See, okay, she's Cathy. Using humor. Yeah.
Yeah. So you spoke about biographies.
Yeah.
In the biography of Cathy Cassata, in the book, what would be the first sentence?
Oh, man. Cathy understood people.
Ooh, I like that. And if you could name this episode, what would you name it?
Wow. Finding humor.
I like that. Of course, it would take a writer to be really quick at these answers. Because these are my go-to questions at the end of the,
these are hard.
Show. Yeah. And usually people are like, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're asking me that." But of course, a writer would be like, "Oh, I got something for you. Let me just throw this out there."
Well, I thought you were going to throw an Oprah question at me about, like, what is soul?
Those are my Oprah questions.
Yes, own unique questions. Go ahead.
When I first started my podcast, I wanted to be this combination of, like, Dr. Phil, Oprah, Barbara Walters. Like, I wanted to know if you were a tree, what tree would you be? But then over time, the show has evolved in so many directions, and these are my
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
A little bit of that, right? You have a little bit of that.
Yeah. These are my intense questions. Like, what? But actually, it does help to get to know people a little bit. Like, get to know how you would start your book. Like,
yeah.
In your writings, what would you hope that people know about you?
My personal writings or just writing in general?
Just writing in general. Like,
as a professional writer? Yeah.
Yeah, because when you wrote, like, the story of me,
right,
there's obviously you wrote it.
Right.
What would you want people to know about you?
Yeah, I would want people to know that in my writing, I ask really good interview questions. and I'm presenting a story empathetically, but also accurately, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. If you got a chance to interview yourself, what would be your first question?
What would be my first question? Did you always know you wanted to be a writer? Maybe I would ask that.
And did you?
Yeah, I started writing poetry when I was about 11 years old. And I actually remember the two first poems. I used to come home from middle school and I'd sit down at my parents' kitchen table and I had this notebook and I actually still have it. And I'd just write poems in it. And the first two poems I wrote were about jealousy, which I don't know why. It was about the emotion jealousy. Kind of makes sense with middle school, especially girls, like adolescent. But I cannot remember if I was jealous or if I felt somebody was jealous of me. I really couldn't tell you. But the other poem was about life after death. And I started thinking about those things very early around that time. What is life after death? What happens to people? So I always knew I wanted to, write.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you remember any of the poem? Either one of them?
I remember life after death. It was pretty simplistic. It was life after death, life beyond. Will it be the same? Will we be alone? What's the next step? What's the next stage? A place of peace, a place of rage. That's what I remember. So it was just questioning. Yeah. I haven't said that out loud in years. Thanks, Danielle. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man.
I don't remember the jealousy one, but I remember that one.
That just kind of got to me.
Oh.
That's pretty. That's pretty. And I think it's deep breath, Garza. Because somebody who's been through stuff like I have,
Sure.
the after is always a thought. Like I always wonder. But of course, my sarcastic side is like, who will I hunt first when I come back?
Is that a question you ask yourself if you were interviewed?
Yeah.
Who would you hunt first when you come back?
Because I told Christian, I said, make sure, because I always carry my keys on a clip on my belt, on my loops, on my belt, anyway, my patent loops.
Yeah.
And I love my boots, I just don't get to wear them as much, and you can always hear boots clanking down the floor. I said, make sure that when I get buried, or when in the viewing, I'm wearing my jeans, my boots, and they got my keys clipped to me. And he's like, why? I said, because when I come back and haunt people, that's what I want them to hear. I want them to know that I'm there because they're hearing my boots and my keys are clinking. I go, plus, if I come and haunt them at 3 o'clock in the morning, it is going to piss the hell out of them. And I want them to be irritated. So yes, I'm not going to be a good ghost. Funny. I'm no Casper. I'm going to come back and torture people. Like, yeah.
I better stay on your good side, okay?
Well, just know that if that should ever happen and you hear keys in the middle of the night, you know that I'm there keeping an eye on you. So
Daniel, okay, great.
Just to know, and people are like, oh, crap. But it's like I tell people, like, if I give you crap, it's because I really like you. If I'm really, really nice to you, then worry.
I'm not so sure about you, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we're down to the last 5 minutes. Any last thoughts or any last things you want to talk about? And where can they find you?
Oh, yeah. You can follow me on Twitter at Cassata Style. You can find me on Facebook. I'm under Cathy Cassata. And I hope to connect some way. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Yeah, well, no, thank you. And just so that everybody knows, what magazines do you write for so they can go and try and find you?
Sure, yeah. Check out healthline.com. There's all kinds of great stories on healthline.com that revolve around health, wellness, mental health, psychology, human behavior. They cover everything. So that's who I mainly write for now. If you're interested a biography, storyterrorist.com, is where, and you can check out their website. It's a cool concept. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna look into that because I'm definitely interested. I've always been wanting to write my book. I just haven't done it.
You haven't done it, and a lot of people kind of, I think, have that feeling,
But I think I'm reaching a point in my life where I'm 48. I'll be 49 this year. I want to get it done by 50 and have it out.
That's a good goal. That's a good goal.
So I may be looking into that just to see what it's all about.
Check it out. You might find it interesting.
And then the Glenn Close.
Bring Change to Mind. BringChangeToMind.com. You can look at their blog section and you'll see my blogs. There's also a bunch of amazing blog posts from people who have mental health issues, sharing their personal experiences. So that might be helpful to a lot of people.
Excellent. So for everybody out there, we've been talking to Cathy Cassata. Now, where are you?
I'm in the Chicagoland area. I'm about half an hour outside of Chicago.
Okay, yeah. I love Chicago.
Great city.
That's what it was. Last year when I went to the conference in Chicago, we were gonna try to meet up, but conference schedules are always so hectic, you just can't get out.
Right. I had talked to you right before that.
Yeah. So Cathy Cassata, she's a freelance writer. Go check her out. I had the pleasure, as we said in the beginning, of meeting her because she was assigned to write a story on me, and it's making the rounds again. So if you are following me on HIV Positive Life, or I'll put it on the Put It Together page. Go check it out there. I mean, what can I say? It's my story. Of course, I know my story, but she did such a wonderful job at putting my story in a way that even it got to me. Because I think I wrote to you and said to you, you made me cry.
Yes, you did.
Because I was like, wow. I was like, wow, this is pretty good. And a lot of my family got to read it, and they were like,
oh, good.
They got to know things that I didn't know about my story, which was really cool.
Oh, good. That's the point. I'm happy to hear that. Okay.
And so go check her out. For everybody listening, find us, Put It Together podcast on Facebook, and you can follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The YouTube page isn't a work in progress, but we'll have videos on there. I promise we'll have videos on there where you can also check out the workshop, Better You workshop. We'll have more episodes of that. What else are we doing? Put It Together conversations. We're going to have Coach Tommy, life coach Tommy, back on the show. Plus, I've talked to some more life coaches who are willing to come on and do Facebook Lives and answer your questions. So stay tuned for that. Thank you to my producer, Mr. Kevin Moyers, for all his help and support. Thank you, Cathy, for being on the air. Don't hang up. We're going to chat for a little bit before you go. For now, this is Daniel Garza saying, hey, put it together.
This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together. This is how I put it together.
Subscribe to Put It Together on iTunes, Stitcher, and at abnormalentertainment.com/putittogether. Find Put It Together on Facebook and tweet Daniel at Lil Messican, LILMESICAN. And for more podcasts, comics, books, movies, and more, head to abnormalentertainment.com.
You've been listening to the Abnormal Entertainment Network.